Welcome to our Caribbean and African Targeted Health Improvement Program, CATHIP Health Hour. The Caribbean and African Health Network, CARN, along with its national partners, are incredibly pleased to continue to bring to you targeted health and well-being education delivered by Caribbean and African doctors. These health hours are all about empowering, educating and giving space to Black people so our communities can look after themselves better. Every Saturday, our Black GPs or consultants present on those health and well-being topics that affect you, your family members and friends. Some weeks will vary and will include other panel members such as pharmacists, specialist nurses and faith leaders. Our health hours cover a range of topics and include mental health, heart health, women's health, reproductive and sexual health issues, men's health, respiratory problems, cancer, sickle cell and many more. We have not forgotten to include within our health hours the many societal, cultural, religious and racial challenges that can go hand in hand with health problems and influence how we should respond to meet health and well-being needs. The sessions are designed for you and we want you to use the time to listen, learn, share your experiences and ask
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to check because the sound just clipped on my side. It's wonderful to have you here again, and I'm welcoming you all to Khan's Health Hour. I want to give a big welcome to all our regular listeners. Thank you again for tuning in and choosing to spend your time with us on a busy Saturday morning. And then I also want to welcome those who are spending time with us for the first time. My name is Dr. Vanessa Rapia. I am a consultant in sexual health and HIV, and I'm based both in the UK and Ghana. And I love spending my Saturday mornings hosting the Health Hour with you. So it's great to be here. And I just want to remind us all why we are here, because the Health Hour is really a space for you, for your friends, for your families, for your networks. It's a space that we can be safe in, that we can trust, that we can come together to really learn about our health and to make sure that we can support ourselves, to take control of our health, but also that we can support others as well. So I would love to hear where you're all tuning in from. I will say that I'm tuning in from Ghana. So I'm right here from then. But I'm sure there's so many of you from different places across the globe. So please be interactive, put it within the chat, say where you are, and if you're watching alone or you're watching with others. And please, 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 as I've said, this is for you, this is for your network. So please do share the link with others so that we can all learn together. Today, we have such an important topic, and it's affected me personally within family members. But I also know that many of you contact us afterwards just to say that with topics that you want to hear more about. And I know this topic is one that has come up significantly. So today we're going to be talking about dementia. And we've got a wonderful speaker who I'll introduce in a second. And we've also got someone with lived experience as well, who is coming to share her relevant experience. And so, as ever, I'm always biased, but I know we're going to have a great morning together because we've got great guests. We've got great listeners, and we're all coming together to share together. We've got the chat, and as I've said, I love that someone has already started and chipped in that he's watching from Lagos, Nigeria. You're welcome. So with the chat, please also put your questions there. After our speakers have shared with us, I will be going through the questions and getting our doctor to answer as much as possible. Time always goes really quickly, so I will do my best to make sure that we answer all, if not as many as we can. But it's also great when you do share in the chat, so we know what gaps you have in learning and what you want to know more, and so that it can also help us for future sessions as well. So please interact. So I am going to now hand over to our wonderful speaker, who is Dr. Amonia Gasper, who is a general practitioner and also a dementia specialist. So no one better than to really take over the session and share her thoughts and learning with us. And then, as I said, she will be bringing in Michelle, someone with lived experience, to just really enhance the session and just make the session more real and more relevant to us all. So, Dr. Gasper, over to you, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. That's very kind of you. I just want to apologize to everybody. It was my fault that we're starting a little bit late with tech, but I also want to apologize ahead because I've got a furry friend who I've left the door open for. But in case you hear barking, I'll try as much as possible to keep him as quiet as I can. Hello, everyone. Greetings from rainy London, and thank you all for joining this Saturday morning. My name is Amonia. I'm a general practitioner, and I have lots of interests, but my special interest is in dementia, elderly care, and caregiving, especially in the African Caribbean diaspora. We're a special community and we've been impacted by lots of different factors: migration, racism, inequity, and a cocktail of lots of traumas that all culminate into what we call neurobiological insults. Anyway, as we kick off this year's World Alzheimer's Month on the 1st of September, I'm really privileged to have this discussion with you. And I thank you, Khan, for your sacrifice for health, education, and your commitment to excellence. So my talk is about dementia, but really it's about life and how our lives pan out from preconception right through possible migration, parenting, from trauma to resilience, all shape our risk of developing dementia and how we live with it. We're here to talk about memory, brain health, and about how dementia affects us specifically in the African Caribbean communities. So I've called it the end of the road, and I'll explain why as we go on. Next slide, please. So I'm going to take us on a journey from brain development to the struggles that African Caribbean families have in the UK and globally, on the continent, in the Americas. Along the way, though, I want us to remember a simple truth. It may not be old age. If you don't take anything away, please remember that. It may not be old age, and it may be dementia. And naming it is the first step to facing the problem that we're faced with. I'll tell you a story. My first job in the UK was with Alzheimer's Concern, and I just thought it would be something fun to do, and it really was. I fell in love with my clients because guess what? They reminded me of my grandmother, but nobody called it dementia. I just thought it was an organization that had lots of old people. They told me regarding my grandmother that she was just getting old. And I realized, even as a qualified medical doctor, I had never been taught dementia properly, or I had probably not listened at that point in class. But it was never spoken about, and that silence is what shaped my fear of old age. But it wasn't just about what I had learned or not paid attention to, because today the statistics tell us that 80% of people still call dementia old age. And sadly, 65% of my healthcare colleagues believe that it is old age and call it that as well. And this is the silence that is killing us, particularly in our community. We need to name it so we can face it. Next slide, please. So brain health is not just for the elderly. When you hear dementia, I know everybody thinks about gray hair and old lady or old gentleman, but brain health begins prenatally, even before a woman has conceived her child. Brain health is dependent on the woman's genetics, her nutrition, the stress that she might be under, her environment. And that's why I use the life course approach, not just for my dementia patients, but across all of my career. In utero, we're thinking about the maternal health. Why do you think that women are advised to start supplements before they fall pregnant, once they are thinking about conceiving? If a woman is going through trauma in her life, and it's not just about physical trauma, mental trauma is not often spoken about. That is also a very big risk factor for later years cognitive decline. Her nutrition, how well she's eating, is she in a war zone? The women in Gaza now, what is going to happen to those babies being born in 50, 60, 70, 80 years? But we know that in childhood, 90% of the brain development has already happened from that very early stage up to the age of 5. So by the time a child is 5 years old, they pretty much have majority of the brain power that they will have that will take them through life. So secure attachments, nutrition, play, learning, these are all the factors that impact our brain health and are super important. Next slide, please. So when we think about how we feed our babies, whether we're giving them breast milk or bottle feeding, when we hold them close, when we talk and we sing to them, we're literally building their brain architecture. We're thinking of them growing big in size, but let's also spare a moment and think about what is happening in their brains, because that is the crux of the matter with our risk of dementia. So next slide, please. I'm going to zip through some slides because my dear friend Michelle, I really want her to say something and I don't want it to be all theory. So this highlights what the brain is going through from very, very young, even sometimes before a woman knows she's pregnant. And the good news is that the brain is very plastic. So it grows, it shrinks, it grows, it shrinks. If it's traumatized, it will shrink, it will get damaged, but it can regenerate itself, which is fantastic. The childhood neglect or malnutrition, there's lots of research showing the brains of those children are smaller with lower volume overall, and that has a lifelong impact. Next slide, please. And then we think about, we've gone from infancy and then we're now looking at adolescence. We call it adolescence, but really we should be looking up to the age of 25 because we know that the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is just sort of right in front there, doesn't mature properly until the age of 25. So when you see 20-year-olds acting in a risky manner, they're not being silly. That is their level of maturity or the level of their brain maturity. And the ABCD study tracked more than 10,000 children, and teen years are very, very critical. Risk of drugs, alcohol, stress exposure, all of this affects lifelong brain health. Likewise, education or lack of education, agency for them to have their own agency, social opportunities, vascular health is particularly important. And it's at this time that due to society and environment, it's considered fun, but we have to also guide them to protect their brain health. Next slide, please. So we now come to adulthood/middle age. And from conception up till this point, we can do and undo with our lifestyle, maybe alcohol, maybe smoking, maybe doing drugs, maybe not sleeping well. And up till this point, we can pretty much get away with murder. But this is the last critical point for prevention of long-term cognitive problems. in all our lives. So, and the reason for this at this point is mainly due to our vascular factors. So anything that affects our heart, our blood vessels, will affect our brain health. And the accumulated effects of experiences, this is where they converge, and this is where vascular health is paramount. As African Caribbeans, we have #1 incidence or prevalence of vascular dementia risk, compounded by lots of other stressors and cultural stigmas. And in the UK, we're more likely to develop dementia, especially vascular dementia. Why is this? Because the inequalities that we face at every stage of life, again, start from the beginning right up till date, all accumulate across the years. On top of this, on our part, we bring cultural stigma, which means that diagnosis is delayed. When we start noticing changes at sometimes age 40, I have 40-year-old patients, 50-year-old patients who sadly have dementia, but we refuse to, or we're unable to acknowledge it. We're unable to name what we're seeing, which it compounds the problem that we may have already achieved over our lifespan. And this silence hurts, not just to us clinicians, but also to families. The stigma around it isolates all of us. And by the time we seek help, it's often too late for most of the early interventions. Next slide, please. So now we come to older age, and it's at this point that most people are thinking dementia. But like I've shown you, we should have been thinking about it when we're teaching children how to put their right shoe on their right foot and left shoe on their left foot, not waiting until this stage. And we've seen that the brain changes throughout life. It reshapes itself in response to experience, in response to health, and in response to age. In older age, brain will change anyway as we get older, but some of those changes are positive, and which we refer to as the wisdom side of aging. All the knowledge that you've accumulated over the years, we get better at judgment, we get better at emotional regulation and taking perspectives. Then there's brain efficiency. We learn to use both sides of our brains. If one side isn't working so well, we know how to compensate, which is why many elders are less reactive and seem to be more content, is the brain being very efficient. And there's also the emotional stability, which is a positive change. The emotional brain, which is the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, calms more easily as we get older. And then we have the not so positive changes, the structural changes. The diagram on my left shows a healthy brain, and then you can see a shrunken brain. As we age, our brains will shrink. We can't help that. It doesn't mean it's dementia. It's just the natural aging process. And the brain gradually loses volume, especially in the memory seats, which is the hippocampus, the part that looks after executive functions and judgments, and the movement areas of the brain. Also, as we age, there's slower connections. All the nerve cells are wrapped up with a nice covering sheath called myelin, but as we get older, it wears down. And so this kind of slows down the transmission of information between brain cells. And then the neurotransmitters that our brain produces, the dopamine, the serotonin, we've all heard of that, that reduces, which affects our mood, our motivation, our memory as we get older. And so apart from the structural changes, we then have the functional changes. We start losing memory of events, the episodic memory, and much earlier than we lose the memory of facts and vocabulary. Processing speed slows down, we've mentioned that, which makes it much harder for us to multitask. what you could do several things at the same time. Now you say, oh, I'm only going to do one thing. It's because your brain is unable to cope with that. And then attention stays strong if you're focusing on one thing, but if your attention is divided, then you don't take in anything either way. But most importantly, our plasticity of the brain remains, especially when it's stimulated with learning, exercise, social interaction, good food, all of that. I'm going to zoom through very quickly now, conscious of time. Next slide, please. So how can we build our brain health? We've mentioned it, but I want to very quickly mention a concept called intersectionality. And I'm doing that because I'm Black and I'm a woman, so I have the prerogative this morning. Because Black women face what we call a triple jeopardy. We live longer, so we face dementia more. As Black people, we face systemic discrimination and higher vascular risks, whether you live in the diaspora or you live on the continent. As migrants, we carry the trauma of dislocation, racism, underemployment, and then when dementia comes, it's often the Black women who bear the carer burden. 90% of dementia caregivers are women. But carers in our community lack support. We want to care, but in the UK, we need systems to support us to care. And this is the heart of my own research, understanding the intersectionalities of the African and Caribbean caregivers. So next slide, please. So now we're coming to the end of the road, the dementia proper, and this is why brain health matters. But let's be honest, many of our elders are already living with dementia. We need to talk about what that means, and this is why I called it the end of the road. Because most people wait until the symptoms are stark in your face and the patients themselves or the caregivers are struggling to care for them properly, then we say dementia. But dementia started from the rudeness of 20 years ago. Dementia started from the not remembering how to balance their finances at the end of the month, which is a very, very common symptom in the early stages. Adverse childhood experiences, neglect, bereavement is a big risk factor, loss of a parent. All of these increase dementia risk decades later. And then the trauma that changes the brain fuels the inflammation and weakens the resilience. But in our community, we know that the trauma is layered. We've got the historical trauma. I won't go into it. For some, there's the migration trauma, and then there's the personal traumas that people experience, poverty, violence, and silence. And unless we name and heal it, we're never going to be able to face it. Very new research I was reading yesterday shows that we lived through the COVID-19 pandemic, which aged our brains. So not just me or you, everybody who was alive at that time. Not just the virus itself, but the isolation, the stress, and the lack of stimulation that happened over that time. So we must face the reality. We now know about the Hoover system of the brain that washes out the toxins and all the bad, sticky, gluey bits, the glymphatic system. Another part that we weren't taught in school, or I wasn't listening, one or the other. We know about poor sleep, especially in our community where shift work is common. We know that it increases dementia risk. We know sedentary behavior also matters. Sitting more than 10 hours a day increases our risk by 65%. This is all critical for us, given all the health inequalities that we're up against in terms of access to green space, safe exercise, and time. So next slide, please. So you might say, what are the symptoms? Shout out or write it in the chats. what are the early symptoms? I don't know. When people say, what should I look out for? I don't know what you should look out for because I don't know you. It's the people who are close to you, who love you, that know what you should look out for. One person may forget their words. Another may see things that aren't there, the visual hallucination. Another person's personality may completely change. They may get more aggressive, or they might get very timid and shy and tearful. It could be anything. So the gentleman that's looking across the horizon, I think the background gives him away. That was the 40th American President, Ronald Reagan. And this was when he announced his diagnosis in 1994 with Alzheimer's disease. He eventually died 10 years later of the disease. And for somebody who was an actor before, you can imagine him not being able to remember his words, even though he had lots of prompts in the White House. His early symptoms were memory lapses. He started repeating himself, started having confusion in public speeches, and then started withdrawing from public life. And then my good friend with a lot of hair, we all know him, Bruce Willis. He's currently living with a type of dementia called frontotemporal dementia, which his family announced to the world a couple of years ago. This often starts earlier than Alzheimer's dementia, and it's really heartbreaking seeing patients with frontotemporal dementia because their whole personality changes. He's an actor as well, and his early symptoms were language and behavior and difficulty remembering his lines. Muhammad Ali, we don't talk enough about traumatic brain injury as one of the major risk factors for developing dementia, but we all know who he is, and he got Parkinson's disease and eventually Parkinson's disease dementia. The first symptoms were the tremors and shaking of his hands and his head, the slow movements, very soft and slurred speech, typical of Parkinson's, and then the hallucinations and confusion. So you can see these three gentlemen had three completely different set of symptoms, all depending on the kind of dementia they had and the part of their brain that was affected. Rosa Parks, we learned about in our history books, and she had a mixed dementia, which is very often a mixture of Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. She was presenting with getting lost in familiar places, repetition, disorientation, and then finally Nina Simone, who had vascular dementia, which is linked to strokes. She had lapses in her memory and difficulty concentrating as well. So there's no one symptom of dementia. If your loved one starts behaving different to what you know of them, then you need to be asking, is it old age or is it something else? Next slide, please. So we've talked a lot about our brain health and what impacts it, and I'm quite happy to end my presentation at this point because that's the bit that we can actually help, that we can control. So I'd really like to clarify that dementia is not one disease. It's a family of conditions, progressive neurodegenerative diseases. There are over 200 subtypes of dementia, depending on lots of factors, the genetics, the parts of brain that is impacted, the presentation. So when we say dementia, it's like me saying, I have a fever. A fever can be from a sore throat, can be from an ear infection, can be from a tummy bug, can be from lots of different things. So dementia is just an umbrella term, but Alzheimer's dementia is the most common. 60 to 70% of cases of dementia are due to Alzheimer's dementia. But in our community, vascular dementia is more prevalent due to the high prevalence of all the risk factors for non-communicable diseases. We're talking about hypertension, diabetes, obesity. It is not a normal part of aging. Dementia is not a normal part of aging. So the most significant global health challenge, why is it important? WHO is scratching their heads. Everybody is a little bit in a quandary what to do, because dementia right now is the most significant global health challenge of the 21st century. And we all have to be aware of it. In the UK, 1 million people are currently living with dementia, and it's the leading cause of death of women since 2011. And that's the Alzheimer's Research UK report. So this is a very brief mention. Next slide, please. A very, very brief mention that the importance of brain health, and that's childhood dementia. So dementia is a disease across the spectrum of age. This is most often due to genetic factors, and it reminds us about brain health across spans all ages. I'm not going to dwell on that because that's a big chapter on its own. So next slide, please. So to bring it home, let's think about how many of us have a mother, a father, an auntie, an uncle, a grandparent that's been touched by this. And the statistics tell us that by 2050, each one of us here will either be living with dementia or caring for someone with dementia. That's how dire the situation is at the moment. Next slide, please. So I've mentioned about intersectionality. I've mentioned about the triple jeopardy that Black women face. And I want to emphasize it again because we need the support. We want to care, but we need systems to support us, not just from family and friends, but also from organizations and governments. And we'll just go quickly. Next slide, please. So we have risk factors for dementia that are fixed. There's nothing I can do about it. I like to think I'm 25. Okay, maybe I'll accept 35, but no more than that. But age is fixed. There's absolutely nothing, no matter how many procedures we get done, our age remains our age. And so these parts of it, our family history, there's nothing we can do about it. We're born to the families we're born into. Our genetics, there's genes that predispose to developing dementia. You're born with it, that's the legacy. Ethnicity, we're Africans, we're Caribbeans, we're Black people, we've got a higher risk. There's nothing we can do about that yet. So let's very quickly go on to what we can help. On the next slide, please. So the Lancet Commission last year, a fantastic document, and this really warms my heart because it gives us hope that 45% of dementia risk can be prevented by addressing these risk factors. And adverse childhood experiences, we've said lots and lots about it, which increase dementia risk decades later. Trauma changes the brain. We've talked about how all that helps. But the WHO tells us that dementia is not inevitable. I might have wonky genes. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to go on to get dementia if I try to avoid the risks, the modifiable risks. There are 7 pillars of brain health and 11 to 13 modifiable risk factors, including controlling blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, education, lifelong learning, addressing hearing loss, preventing smoking, alcohol harm, inactivity. Sedentary lifestyle is killing more people than cigarette smoking. Tackling depression, trauma, isolation. Each of these risks is shaped across the life course, and each is an opportunity for us to intervene and help that person not go on into cognitive decline. And most of these risk factors are pretty obvious. I think we all know it, but I'd like us to focus on one of the risk factors that we often don't say loud in our community, and that is that many of us are lonely. I'm not saying in the dramatic, desperate sense, but in the quiet, persistent way that comes from not feeling properly understood. And as adults, we are not taught or shown how to make friends who make us feel truly seen. So we all seem to be performing or acting on a stage. My observation, and feel free to disagree with me, is that we simply live in a world where sincerity has fewer places to go. So people are forgetting how to be sincerely themselves. Next slide, please. And guess what? By the time somebody has dementia, in a nice way, they have the easy end of it because it's the family and the loved ones that are there to bear the brunt. How long does a dementia illness last? I don't know. Some people, 10 years, some people, they decline very, very quickly. Some people can live with it up to 20 years. But it's the families and loved ones that are really challenged by this cruel illness and the stigma in our community that stops families from seeking help is a dummy whammy for all of us. So let's go. I think we'll skip the next slide, if that's okay. Yeah, just for time's sake. So how do we get a diagnosis? First of all, let's accept that something isn't quite right. I'm not sure what's going on. And then see your GP. We're the first port of call. And what we do is we say hello, we say hi, and we try to rule out all the preventable causes. We do a blood panel, chest x-ray, urinalysis, and then we do a mini mental states exam, which is non-invasive. But I'd like us to exercise caution with this, especially since the traditional mini mental state exam is not necessarily culturally appropriate. There's no point asking about who the King of England is to my grandmother, who might be able to tell you who the Oba of Lagos is. It doesn't mean she may have dementia or not if she doesn't know who the Queen of England is. So you have to put it in cultural context. And there is hope. There's new medications. There's the lecanemab, there's docanumab. But the thing is that it needs to be started early. So it needs to be started when you think that your loved one, early to the point that if you don't know this person, you won't even know there's anything wrong, which is a big problem for us. That's the stage that starting early treatment has half a chance of making a difference. But very often we present in crisis. We present when something terrible has happened. Maybe our loved one has lashed out at somebody, or they can't, or they've wandered, they've left home and they don't know their way back, and the police have picked them up. So we need to really have a think and a chat with ourselves about early diagnosis. And then we have blood-based biomarkers, which can now detect Alzheimer's risk much, much earlier and more cheaply, but it's not available. Well, I can't prescribe it yet in practice, but in tertiary hospitals, they're using it almost more in terms of research. But with the NHS, we know will soon, very, very soon, be using blood-based biomarkers. But here's the challenge. If we're excluded, you and I, African Caribbeans, from clinical trials, from research trials, we're not going to know if these treatments work for us. And that's why inclusion into research is a necessity for equity. Nobody's doing us a favor. We need to look after ourselves and take responsibility. The same way that some medications for high blood pressure, for instance, are more effective in African Caribbeans, and we prescribe accordingly. Likewise, if we're not part of a research trial and we don't know what's going on there, and we then eventually need the medication, if we take it, then we get what we get. We don't know. That's the time our trial is starting. So I think everybody think really carefully about being involved with research. Once your GP has done all the primary care investigations, you're quickly referred to memory clinic. We know that there's a postcode lottery with who gets what in terms of scans and all of that. But for me, it's the delayed diagnosis by even presenting in the first place. Next slide, please. We don't have a cure for dementia yet, but we have care. There's quality of life can be improved. All the work Khan is doing, fantastic. All the local dementia cafes. Global surveys show that people with dementia and their carers want the same things: dignity, quality of life, emotional connection. Even when memory fades, even in severe dementia, emotion remains. And so the person may not remember what they had for breakfast. They may not remember where they are. They may not even recognize their loved ones, but they remember good feelings, and that is what keeps them going. The ability to love, to laugh, and connect is preserved. Families often tell us that she doesn't remember my name, but she remembers the song we used to sing. And that's just so beautiful. So carers need support. In our African Caribbean families, caregiving is seen as love and duty, and that's absolutely fine. But without systems, it becomes isolation and burden. And supporting our carers is actually supporting our patients. So next slide, please. So I'm almost done. There's what's new. We've just come from the Toronto conference, which was really amazing, and it really highlighted that structured programs encompassing everything that we know already: physical activity, tailored diets, cognitive and social engagement, and health monitoring is what we need, even with people with apolipoprotein E4 genes and poor heart health. We know about biomarkers, which is a clinical game changer and is now used even as a substitute to having PET scans or lumbar punctures and all those invasive things. Traumatic brain injury is really highlighted, and chemo brain. And we know that women are more affected by trauma to the brain and chemotherapy for whatever reason than men. So that's something as well to highlight. We know about the medications, we know about the consequences of environmental toxins, flames, hydrocarbons, all that kind of thing, being exposed to lead. All of that affects our brain health and is preventable. So where do we go from here? Next slide, please. So for me, where we go is we need to name dementia in our communities. We need to teach brain health the same way we teach our children to brush their teeth right from babyhood. We need to teach them how to look after their brains in schools and churches and in our homes. We need to support our caregivers with a lot of dignity, and we need to demand inclusion in research. Also, trauma is a big risk factor. We need to heal trauma across generations. If we do this, we can not only protect our communities, but we can also help to eliminate the silence and the stigma that surround it. So one way to break the silence for me is a beginner's mind. Science itself was trapped in an expert's mind. The person who was the father of neuroscience at one point told us that the adult brain couldn't grow new cells. And we believed that for more than 100 years. Now we know that's not true. We know that the brain continues to regenerate right up to death. So if experts could be wrong for so long, we too must learn with humility and curiosity and openness that it might be old age, but it might be something else as well. Thank you very much.
Dr. Gasper, Dr. Amonia, I'll call you personally. That was absolutely fantastic.
I'm sorry I took so long.
No, 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 no. Please do not apologize because I am sure everyone has learned so much. I have as a clinician, but also as a Black woman and looking after older parents, but also other members of a family, not just thinking about older age as well. So, and you conveyed it so beautifully. So, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know that we have Michelle now, who you're going to have an interaction with, just to share Michelle's experience. And we are also really honoured to have Carl Case, who won the Black Healthcare Awards for Social Care Professional of the Year, who has done significant work in creating dementia resources. So I want to really give some space to Michelle and also to Carl afterwards. And then I have questions coming in thick and fast as ever. So we will do our best. But I just think it's a testament of how powerfully you shared this really important insights. So I'm going to hand over back to you, Dr. Amonia, to bring in Michelle, and then we'll go from there.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Vanessa. Michelle and I met at a Dementia Carers Counts meeting. I think it was a couple of years ago or so. Needless to say, we were the only Black people in the audience. So we came together and started collaborating and are building up a platform that mirrors the support and the resources that we see with Dementia Carers Count, but with a cultural edge for African Caribbean people. We're providing community and tribe and holding space, aren't we, Michelle, for this cruel disease? Michelle has become a sister now, and she reminds me to go to bed when my head is buzzing. She's a psychologist, a qualified counselor, and was a full-time caregiver up till March the 23rd, when she lost her dear mum, Auntie Laura, to dementia. But she had good innings, 97. Please welcome Michelle Guthrie and to tell us about her journey. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Amonia, for such a wonderful introduction. Good afternoon to everyone on the platform. I'm quite happy to be here to share my experiences with you all and open to any questions. So, my dear mum, known to many affectionately as Aunt La, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's probably about 4 years ago now. And just to step back a bit, she was born in 1927, came from Jamaica. And had all her life living in England. And about 5 years ago or so, I started to notice little changes, which was out of character for mum. So, for example, she didn't realize that she was watching the same program time and time again. So she loved this program called Come Dine With Me. It's a food cookery type program, you probably know it. And she'd always come to my home and say, I want to watch Come Dine With Me. But she just didn't realize that she hadn't seen that episode before. So that kind of got me thinking, this is a bit odd. This is not like mum. And then one day she went out on the bus and she ended up miles away from home, to the point that somebody had to call her a cab to get back to her home. And I thought, no, this is definitely out of character. It's not mum. And then she started to get irritable and quite moody at times. And I noticed she'd start a conversation, but she couldn't finish her sentences. And then I thought, no, something is not quite right. So I made an appointment with her GP. And the GP suggested that I go to the memory clinic. He referred me to the memory clinic. But it took months and months before we were able to get an appointment with the memory clinic. Anyway, the long and short of it is we managed to get an appointment and the person came out to our home to do the full assessment. And my mum turned around and she said to me, what is this? Who is this woman? Why is she here? You know, she started getting a bit anxious. But she went through the whole process of the various tests and questions that they asked her, and she hated it. You can imagine all these questions. Like Amonia said, you know, they were asking her things like, who is the Queen of England? And so many different questions. But I noticed mum started to become more irritable the minute the person asked her to do some drawings. So they asked her to do something like draw a circle in a triangle and what have you. And Mum just didn't understand, you know. And all the questions that she was asking her from her childhood, school, right up until present day, Mum was just struggling and she absolutely hated it. So anyway, they went off, spoke to a doctor, examined all the paperwork, and they came back to me and said, she's got Alzheimer's. And to be honest, I wasn't really surprised. I knew something was wrong. And then as time went on, as the days progressed, particularly when it came on to late afternoon, early evening, Mum was becoming more and more restless, very irritated and agitated. Then I started to do my own research and found this concept sundowning, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. And then I thought, maybe that's what's going on. She's not being able to distinguish between night and day. And then as time progressed, she started to cry a lot. She was constantly crying, and no amount of pacifying could calm her down. And it just started to get worse. And then I became quite distressed myself, not quite knowing what to do for her. And then we got the GP involved, myself and my sister, and they put her on like antidepressants. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. I'm not a doctor, but I think it was something called mirtazapine. Is that correct? Some type of antidepressant, mirtazapine. But we noticed when we gave that to her, she was just totally zonked out. And in fact, she appeared to be worse. So I took her off it. I thought, no, this is not working. But it got to a point where she just couldn't be left alone at home. So we had a routine between myself and my sister Jackie. So Jackie would stay with her for 1 week, I would stay with her the following week, and so on, because she just couldn't be left alone. But then it became very, very stressful for me and my sister, but particularly for me, because I was used to going out and about. I loved the gym. You know, I was building my private practice as a therapist, but I noticed even I began to get quite irritable and moody myself. I couldn't go to the gym because Mum couldn't be left alone. I wouldn't leave her alone. And then I thought to myself, oh my gosh, if I'm feeling so overwhelmed with all of this, how many people must there be of African Caribbean descent that are feeling as I am? So last year, January 2024, I went to bed and an idea came to my head and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to start a dementia support group. So I thought of a name that I really liked, and it was Nyakoma. I don't know if the pronunciation is correct because I'm not from African origin, but when I researched what it meant, I thought this is absolutely what I need. So Nia meaning having a sense of purpose, and Akoma relating to love, unity, endurance. So I just got some flyers printed and started telling people about it. And that's what happened. That's how the platform was born. So we've been going from strength to strength since January 2024. My dear friend Amonia came on and supported me. So we do the support groups together once a fortnight on a Thursday between 1 and 2. And I feel it's just helped not only myself, but so many other people out there in the community that are going through the struggles that I had to face. But it really was a tough journey. I have absolutely no regret supporting Mum right until the end, but it was quite exhausting, as you can imagine. Mum was a very proud person. There's no way she would have wanted to be put in a home. We tried to have respite for a couple of weeks by putting her in a home for what was supposed to be 3 weeks. She cried continuously for 3 days and we just had to take her out. Once she came home, we then made the decision to try and get full-time carers in because it was becoming too much for us. Now, I don't know how much you're aware, but social services come in, they do an assessment, and they said, your mum's got too much finances. if you have full-time carers, you're going to have to pay for it. So to make her happy, we decided to really pay for her care at home, which was costing us over £1,000 a week. So you can imagine £4,000 a month for mum to be able to stay at home, but we felt that we had no choice. But again, it became difficult, even though she was at home, because the problem we faced is that we found it a struggle to get carers that really cared and loved mum the way we would. So we felt that they weren't really in it with their hearts. It was more about what they could get out of it. And when we weren't with her because we had to go out for whatever reason, a few days later we'd realize, oh, this was missing. Where is this? Where is that? And we then began to discover that the carers took things from her home, and mum was vulnerable and she didn't realize. So it was a lot to deal with. It was a lot to deal with. But then at the beginning of March this year, mum stopped eating, she stopped drinking, and we thought, oh, what's happened here? And she just declined quite rapidly, to be honest. We then got on board St. Christopher's Hospice, which were absolutely amazing. We didn't leave mum, and what I would call a good ending, she slipped away quietly in the middle of the night on the 23rd of March with both myself and my sister present, which I thank God for, because she wasn't on her own. So that's basically my journey with dementia. It's cruel. You know, you really see the changes. It's absolutely cruel. I don't want anyone to have to go through what I went through. And so this is the reason why, for me, it's important that the support group that we have in place, it's important I can reach out with Amonia as well, and we can help each other. So with my support group, it's threefold really, because we share resources. Any new studies or research that comes out, we share it with each other in the group. We offer emotional support. So the carers are able to share their feelings, the highs as well as the lows. And we feel that we all understand each other, so it gives us comfort in a way. And it's also community connection, because we share ideas from a cultural perspective, which, you know, helps enormously, because we talk about food, we talk about all sorts of things, and it's really, really inspiring. And the greatest thing for me, even if you change one person's life, it's not about numbers, it's about, you know, giving people support that they need, the quality. So I'm proud to say that we have people come on our platform from America, the Caribbean, and the UK. And any carer from an African Caribbean background is more than welcome to join our support group. As I say, every other Thursday, starting at 1 o'clock until 2, or just sometimes past 2, we're there. So the next meeting is this coming Thursday. So if anyone on this platform is listening, that they know any carers of African Caribbean background that could benefit from the group, please, please, please tell them about it, and we're happy to support them in any way that we can. So that's briefly my story. I'm open to any questions. I should also say, a part of the support group as well, where we can, we bring in guest speakers from an African Caribbean background. So for example, at one of the sessions, we had a Black Admiral nurse on, who came on, because some people don't know that there is a telephone number through the Alzheimer's Society where you can contact that give you support, should in case you're absolutely frustrated or you need somebody to talk to. So there is a Black Admiral nurse. There's a new service that started where you can get an appointment to liaise with a Black Admiral nurse for support. So we try and get guest speakers in that are of relevance around the topic of dementia.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you. I'll very quickly just introduce Carl. I'm really honored to be introducing Carl. Oh my God, Carl, I read all about you when I was doing my research. Carl is a dementia educator and an advocate, and well known for his pioneering culturally appropriate care for African Caribbean communities, and founder, I think, co-founder of the Sheffield Memory Hub, and he's developed innovative tools such as the African Caribbean Dementia Toolkit. Carl, thank you very much for speaking to us.
Well, let me say thank you. Let me say thank you to Michelle, because Michelle, you've been on a journey, and you that many care partners, many family members who are living with somebody with dementia, you've been on that journey. Yeah. And I'd like to thank you for sharing not just aspects of that journey, but for also sharing some of the support that is now available, some of the support that you've helped to create. So thank you so much for that. Dr. Amonia, yeah, many thanks for this engaging, informative session. And I think it's a session which we've all found engaging and informative, where you've touched upon many of the factors which have contributed towards us being 22% at a greater risk of developing dementia. And you've also touched upon something which a lot of organizations and others do not speak about, the systematic racism, which also contributes towards it. Hans, thank you for this session, because the voices and experience of Black, African, and Caribbean people are missing from the broader dementia conversations. Historically, we've been missing. Contemporary, we've been missing. And what's this resulting in is that it's resulting with us being left out of the research, left out of the planning, and generally left out of service development. And when services are provided, we frequently find that they are invariably not culturally appropriate to our and our families, our elders and loved ones living with dementia. So thank you. Amonia, you spoke earlier about hope. Yeah, and I'd like to focus upon hope. Yeah, because there when somebody gets diagnosed with dementia, it's not the end of the road. It's the beginning of a new chapter in their life. And we can all, and there are ways in which we can contribute and enable them to live the best lives possible whilst they are living with their dementia. And from an African Caribbean perspective, what we've been doing, we've been developing resources. I'm from culturally appropriate resources, and we're developing a wide range of resources to help families and those living with dementia from our backgrounds. I won't go into a long list of them, but there's if listeners Google my name, Carl Case, C-A-R-L-C-A-S-E, videos, you will find a range of videos from our perspective, highlighting ways in which our elders, and not just elders, others living with dementia, can be enabled from a cultural perspective. What I'd also like to share with you, if you Google Mansfield Museum Windrush exhibition, Scene 3D, SCENE 3D, you have access to a Windrush museum virtually. You and your elder can go, you and your loved one can engage in that museum, turning left, turning right, turning on the different videos. And what that does, yes, it triggers a lot of their memories of their earlier days in this country, of their earlier days back home. Yeah, and by triggering those memories, yeah, they are then restored back to the pedestal of the storyteller. And quite often when they share some of these stories, yeah, what they're sharing is aspects of your family history, aspects which you may not be aware of. Yeah, so that is another resource. I know time is tight, and it's important for us to open up to questions, but I'd just like to share one more thing. Amonia, you touched upon the modifiable risks. And there are ways in which all of us can minimize the risk of us developing dementia. There are ways in which, if we're already diagnosed, there are ways in which we can contribute towards slowing down the decline. I'm not one to advertise newspapers. However, this coming Wednesday in the Daily Star, I've contributed towards an article in regards to minimizing the risk of dementia. So that's this Wednesday in the Daily Star. So I'm going to pause here to enable people to ask questions, because I'm sure there's so many questions that people wish to answer. And I know that I may not be able to answer them, but we've got Michelle and Amonia with us. So I'm going to pause at this stage and say back to yourselves.
Thank you so much, Carl. That was amazing, and I have I've read your work as well and seen your work, so it's great to hear you on here. I also just want to echo your thanks to Michelle, because you brought to life your life and that of your mothers and your experiences, and I can see that it's touched many people, because the questions that we're getting, just to relate, you answered a number of the questions because it related to how people were feeling and not really having spaces to speak to other people about how they were feeling. And so what you've shared and what yourself and Amonia have created, and Carl's resources as well, I know is really, really impactful to people that are listening. So first of all, thanking you all for all your contributions. I am very aware, as ever, that we have overrun, but we have a number of questions. Some of them all tie in with things, as I've said, that Michelle and Carl have answered because it related to support. But I just wanted to give an opportunity to for one or two questions. For those that are unable to stay, apologies for running over, but I think you'll admit that this has been such a great session, and we didn't want to lose any minute of it. So, but we do apologize for the time running over. And if you can't listen to the answers now, please do go back onto YouTube and all the other social media platforms for where it is to look back. But thank you for those who have been with us until this time. And if you'll just indulge us for a couple more minutes, we'll just go through some of the questions. And I think one of the earlier questions, and Dr. Amonia, you mentioned it, but I think just to reinforce it, because it's come up twice, it was about, can stress, trauma, or depression make memory worse? So related to that. So just if we could get your views on that, please.
Yes, absolutely. Stress, trauma, and depression affects memory in lots of different ways through several different pathways. When you say stress and memory, first and foremost, you're not able to focus, you're not able to concentrate if you're stressed or you're depressed. Those are the first symptoms that kind of fly out of the window. If you don't focus and you don't concentrate, then you might read a book or talk to somebody, but you're not retaining that information to be able to bring back at a future time. So it's not so much the memory per se, as the information is not registering in your brain to be able to be used in the future. But quite often now we don't know if dementia, or we know rather that dementia can lead to, depression can lead to dementia, as well as being a symptom of dementia. So it's very important to address any dementia-like illnesses. And there's so many symptoms that are symptoms of depression. For instance, not sleeping properly, insomnia, is a big symptom of depression, but it's also can be a symptom of dementia. So there's a lot of overlap. And the short answer to all of that is yes. Stress, depression, anxiety, all of that, and dementia are hand in hand as cause and effect.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And another question to all of you is about there's this has come up a number of times, so I'm kind of paraphrasing. But how do we support a loved one when their memory starts fading? And I think this has come up a lot when people are saying that they're noticing it maybe early, and it's just how to support them, because someone's commented that their loved one has become so distressed, and so wanted to just get some ideas and thoughts about how to support.
If a loved one's memory starts fading and you're noticing it, say now, be completely rest assured that they've noticed it several months or even years that my memory is not so good. And imagine sitting down thinking, I can't remember stuff. I don't remember stuff, but I can't talk about it because of the stigma that's attached to it in our community. So that again is a double whammy for them. So I had more slides, but I had already well overrun, and it was a few books that I think everybody should read and have in their library. One of them is called Contented Dementia. So even when the memory fades, the emotions, the feel-good parts of the brain is still reasonably intact, the right side of the brain. So don't try to pull them back into your world. You need to go with them into their world. So if they don't remember that they've eaten, don't go and make them another plate of Garian soup, for instance. Instead, say, you've not eaten, no problem. Give them an apple, because you don't want them piling on the weight and all that. Don't stand and argue with them, but I just gave you food 10 minutes ago, or you're just going to make them more distressed. Or if you're able to distract them, then that's fine. They'll get distracted and they'll quickly not remember around what they seem to have forgotten or anything like that. But try to retain the good feelings. A dementia brain is like a photo album that, they're looking through it, they remember the events, they remember the occasions, and then halfway down the line, they're looking at the album and pictures are missing. It's blanks because of parts of the brain that's been affected. So always tell yourself, I need to be in their world, not to bring them into my world. I remember, they don't remember. So even if what they're saying doesn't make any sense at all, don't argue. Just try and support them as best as you can.
Thank you. As I've said, a lot of the questions relate to support, and so I know, and I wonder whether, as you said, like with contented dementia, there were other slides that you were going to share, whether the slides will be made available, and there are links that have been put in the chat about the support group and for Carl's YouTube link. But I just want to do two more questions. One is, are there specific foods in African Caribbean diets that are good for brain health?
There's loads of foods that are good for brain health. The problem with a lot of the African Caribbean diet is not necessarily the quality of the food, even though that has deteriorated massively over the years. It's the quantity. And it's very carbohydrate heavy. And don't forget, the dementia that we tend to have is the vascular dementia, which is linked to diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, all of that. So our vegetables, our soups in Africa, there's loads of different soups that are extremely healthy for brain health. And the good thing about it is not even so much the food, but how it's prepared, where now everything comes out of a packet and put in the microwave. Very extremely unhealthy and not very good for brain health on the whole. But the traditional foods in appropriate quantities is a bit far from me, but I'd have shown you a bowl. You can go and get it on Amazon, but the kind of rice, I remember my grandmother, if you give her food, she would, and when after I qualified, I was trying to make everybody healthy, and I would give her like small portions, not the usual bowl full or plate full of food. And she would look at what I gave her and say, if you want to give me food, give me. If you don't want to give me food. So suggesting that the portion was too small. So
I love that.
we're used to that, but we have to try and get our head around eating to live, not, eating because there's food.
Yeah. No. I think that's right. It's the eating to live and getting that balance that is so right. And the last question before we just kind of bring the session to a close, and I hand over to colleagues in Cannes. It's a kind of a double question, so I'm probably cheating, but it's about and I think it's directed as well to Michelle and to Carl as well, is where can carers in the Black community get emotional and financial support? But there's a kind of layered questions that have been coming with this, is that how do we avoid feeling guilty when caring gets overwhelming? And I know, Michelle, you shared some of your experiences, but I think it's the looking for the emotional support when that does get overwhelming, and trying to avoid those feelings, which are difficult and human, but also the financial support. So if there are any insights that yourself or Carl or Amonia could share just as we end.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, really. You see, I think we need to open up and ask for help. I think we just need to be just open and say, look, I'm not coping. I am struggling. I need help. I need support. Don't say to people, oh, ring me if you need anything. No, just take them what they need. Just be there for them. Don't be asking, oh, let me know when you want this and that. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. You just have to reach out for the support and say to your friends and family, I'm not coping. Be transparent and get them to support you in the best way they can. In terms of finances, it's difficult. I mean, we had an awful time with social services, to be honest. The forms, it's form upon form upon form. And then a social worker comes to your house, gives you a full assessment and what have you, only to be told, I'm sorry, we can't help you. It's difficult. I don't know, it's frustrating. Basically, if you don't have money, what do you do?
I think to add to what Michelle said, it's all about early diagnosis. Nobody's going to give you any money or any support if you haven't got a diagnosis. And a lot of people in our community just don't come forward. And even at the slightest hint of this might be dementia, you don't see them again. But there's nothing you can do about it. I didn't mention it, but I think something that's extremely important for everybody is if you have an elderly one, while they still have capacity, make sure you get power of attorney.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't get power of attorney and then they get the diagnosis, then you've kind of missed that train and everything just gets 10 times harder to sort out. But with an early diagnosis, you get referred early, you get investigations early, you get diagnosis early when you're still able to make decisions and help yourself. And then between yourself and your family, you can try and get all the support depending, it's all means tested because obviously health economics and all that. But you're more likely to get the support if you start early than when you're presenting in a sort of crisis situation or the ambulance is taking you into A&E and all of that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Amonia. And also to say that in addition to power of attorney, you must have a will. That's vital because the deterioration with dementia can happen so rapidly. You need to talk to your family about what is it you want, in case inevitable happens. A lot of our African Caribbeans, we don't want to talk about it. We think the minute you mention the word will, you're going to die tomorrow. But hey, the stresses and strains that I've seen, if you don't have a will in place, unbelievable. I mean, fortunately for my parents, they were very organized people. They had their will. My parents, my mum and dad paid for their funeral before they died. So we didn't have to worry about that. But, you know, dealing with dementia and not having power of attorney, just I can't begin to think. So it's really important that we have these things in place, definitely.
What you've been highlighting is that whoever's on this dementia journey, it's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult, and you people are walking in unknown waters. So the support is crucial. In Sheffield, we set up the Sheffield Memory Hub. We meet on a weekly basis, primarily for people living, primarily for people of African and Caribbean descent, living with dementia and other cognitive challenges. And it's not just for people living with those challenges, it's for the care partners as well. Within that group, the care partners have other members of the community who are walking along similar journey, walking along a similar path, and they can get support, and they do get support from one another. However, support agencies like ourselves, primarily Black focus, are few and far in the country. And when we look at the dementia cafes, which do provide support, very few Black people go to those dementia cafes. However, where our people go is to church, yes, and other places of worship. So, and now I'm throwing a challenge out there, is that for all the churches and church leaders, congregations, just to reflect, how can our church become more dementia friendly? Yeah, how can it become, can they become more dementia inclusive? Because I can almost guarantee that every church up and down, every Black-led, Black majority church up and down the country, I've got members of the congregation who are waiting for a diagnosis of dementia or who are diagnosed, right? Yeah, and it's so easy for them to feel ostracized. Yeah, if people within the congregation aren't dementia aware and conscious. Yeah, so if somebody's having a certain displaying certain behavioral patterns within a service, it's so easy for others just to give them the cut eye or on people started tut, right? And if that's the situation, their care partner feels alienated from taking them to church, them to worship, and going through this crisis. They need their faith. Their faith is part of who they are. Yeah. So so it's quite easy, and I've come across many who have been ostracized from their place of birth because of lack of understanding or awareness that dementia is a brain health situation, yeah, a brain health condition, and it needs to be recognized. Yeah, and for the churches to reflect upon how can we become more dementia friendly? How can we provide the support, the appropriate support to the family that they need as they're going through this crisis and critical journey?
Mm-hmm. Carl, I think you've just that call to action that you've just given, I think is really a beautiful way to end, because it's and I think it's also, we need to broaden that call to action to all of us as well, about how we create spaces for the conversation, and how we, if we don't see spaces that we all go to, like our faith groups, etc., that are not being dementia friendly, what can we do to challenge what's happening to make sure that everyone is embraced? So I know that we have come to 12:30 in the UK. Well, I'll give us a minute, 12:29. And we were supposed to finish it 29 minutes earlier. But every time I do Health Hour, I always say the same thing, but it's because we have the right people speaking and the right people sharing. And again, today was another perfect example of that. So I really, really want to thank Dr. Amonia Gasper for your amazing delivery and content, Michelle for your honesty, openness, and for all the work that you're doing, and for Carl as well for coming on at the last minute to really share all the powerful things that you're doing. It's been such a great morning. And I also want to thank everyone that's given all your contributions. I tried to bring them all together. Apologies if I didn't do it justice, but it seems like another follow-up session is going to be needed. So, but thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hand over to Sam from Khan to kind of bring things together and give more of the highlights of what's to come. But thank you everyone so much. We don't take your time lightly on a Saturday morning. So thank you. Sam, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vanessa. I would like to say thank you very much again to Carl, just echoing what Dr. Vanessa said, and Michelle and Dr. Amonia. This has been truly an inspiring session for everyone tuning in today, and I think it's important. But for me, one of the big takeaways is that when someone's going through this experience, not to make them feel isolated, try and make sure that they continue their routine. And as Carl said, the faith aspect that we all take dear to our hearts. It's also important to those going through this experience, so we shouldn't shy away from taking them to church or taking them to the mosque or continue that faith aspect that they've built over the years. So I'm just going to quickly go through some upcoming events and opportunities happening here at Khan. I've put some links in the chat, so please feel free to register on any of these links if you are interested in. Next week, we'll be having a session on advancing inclusion through Black involvement and clinical research, just as Dr. Amonia mentioned earlier on. If we aren't in the room, if we're not part of the research, if we aren't counted for, when things are created, when things are brought to the forefront, we'll be lacking because we didn't put ourselves there to make a change. So I'm just encouraging all of you to please attend next week's session where we discuss with Dr. Doyi about how important it is that we can be involved in clinical research, which is an ongoing issue within our community. Thank you. In a couple of days' time, on the 16th of September, we have the Black History Month Media and Comms event. This is for anyone within the creator space. If you work within marketing, media, comms, PR, please do register, scan the QR code or click the link to register. We want to, find a way where we can amplify voices in Greater Manchester. If you're not in Greater Manchester, you are still welcome to join us. We want to make sure that everyone knows that Black History Month and the voices during Black History Month aren't just amplified during that October, that it should be amplified throughout the whole year. And we should all have a unified voice in how we amplify the voices of our community. So please feel free to register. It's a free event. It's happening on Tuesday, the 16th of September from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. On the 4th of September, we have a special legal drop-in session happening where the topic is focused on legal actions after overstaying in the UK. We do know this is something that happens within our community, and we're here to provide support and help and crucial advice from a speaker known as Severin Simo. She will be there to give us a crucial education on how we can navigate this uncertain time. So please feel free to click the link in the chat boxes that I've left it. And if you have any questions, do contact advocacy@khan.org.uk. So for upcoming Black History Month happening at Gorton and the Gorton Monastery, if you have any businesses or any artwork or anything you want to showcase to the world, please do scan the QR code or click the link and secure your place to showcase your work at our Black History Month civic launch event. It's going to be a huge event happening in Manchester on the 25th of September. So please do book in your place for your stall. As I said earlier on, we will be celebrating 80 years of the Pan-African and Caribbean resilience. If you didn't know, 80 years ago here in Manchester, the 5th Pan-African Conference took place, which sparked a global change all across the world, from the Caribbean, from Africa, from people in Europe felt, empowered to do more for the community. We'll be celebrating this on the 25th of September at the monastery in Gorton. It's a free event. The doors will be open at 6 p.m. for those that want to come and visit the stores or network with the community and those that are there. And the event is going to start from 7 p.m. So we look forward to seeing you. There's going to be cultural performances. There's going to be special talks, and there's going to be a lot more entertainment and lots more that I don't want to give away. So I hope to see you on the 25th of September. We have the Black History Month Khan Gala coming up very, very soon. October is around the corner. As we know, the year has gone pretty quickly. August is practically done. So by the time you know it, we'll be celebrating the Khan Gala on the 11th of October from 6:30 p.m. During this gala, we'll be celebrating people within the community who are been outstanding over the years. We know that people in the community are quite hardworking, and sometimes they don't get the opportunity to be given the stage to be celebrated or be recognized by those around them. So please, this is your opportunity to come and support these people who may not always have the opportunity to be celebrated. So we are giving them the platform to celebrate them at the Black History Month Khan Gala. At this event, there's going to be performances, there's going to be a 3-course meal, there's going to be lots of entertainment, there's going to be raffles, there's going to be a few speeches here and there, but it's just an evening for our community to come together in October in Black History Month to celebrate our people in the way that we know best. So please feel free to click the link, purchase your ticket, purchase your table, share it with your friends and family, come with your colleagues. If you need something to celebrate this year, here's a great opportunity to come and do that. And I look forward to seeing you. If you do have any questions, do contact events@khan.org.uk. Thank you very much again for sticking with us for the rest of the day. During this session, I know we did run over time, but we do appreciate every single one of you tuning in and your contributions in the chat, your contributions from the guest speakers, and sharing this with your friends and family to make sure that we are all educated and we are all deeply connected in this way to improve our health literacy. So once again, I'd like to say thank you all and have a wonderful rest of your Saturday.
Welcome to our Caribbean and African Targeted Health Improvement Program, CAFIP Health Hour. The Caribbean and African Health Network, CARN, along with its national partners, are incredibly pleased to continue to bring to you targeted health and well-being education delivered by Caribbean and African doctors. These health hours are all about empowering, educating and giving space to Black people so our communities can look after themselves better. Every Saturday, our Black GPs or consultants present on those health and well-being topics that affect you, your family members and friends. Some weeks will vary and will include other panel members such as pharmacists, specialist nurses and faith leaders. Our health hours cover a range of topics and include mental health, heart health, women's health, reproductive and sexual health issues, men's health, respiratory problems, cancer, sickle cell and many more. We have not forgotten to include within our health hours the many societal, cultural, religious and racial challenges that can go hand in hand with health problems and influence how we should respond to meet health and well-being needs. The sessions are designed for you, and we want you to use the time to listen, learn, share your experiences and ask questions to our Black doctors. During every session, we will gather your feedback so we can continue to respond to the needs of our Black community. To request any particular topic, please email health@khan.org.uk. We encourage you to invite others to our health hour sessions. Spread the word in our community.